All right, well, that's the top of the hour, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what is the last ReadTech Life Sciences webinar of 2017. We quickly put this webinar on the calendar because there is a very important change to FDA's requirements for drug product companies this year, and so we wanted to just give everyone one more chance to all get on the same page and make sure that we can help you comply with those changes. Quickly for our agenda today, I'll just go over a few housekeeping issues and introduce our speaker, and then John Nolan, our speaker, will be taking us through the changes that are causing the need to respond on the part of industry, and then the actual blanket no change certification process, the requirements and the timelines. Maybe we should say the very impending deadline for that submission type. And then we'll have some time left over to take any questions that you may have as an audience. Just want to remind everybody we do typically record each of our webinars and make the recording and the slides available to all registrants afterwards. So if you need these slides for reference, or if you'd like to review the recording or send it to any of your colleagues, you'll have a chance to do that. Usually takes us a couple days to get the recording edited and uploaded to our Knowledge Center, but you will be able to do that. And you can submit questions anytime through today's presentation. You don't have to wait for the Q&A section, so if you have a question about something John covers, just go ahead, use the Q&A module if you would, not the chat module, because I may not see your question come in if it comes in through chat. Please use the Q&A module and send us any questions you have as you have them. You don't need to wait till the end of the presentation. Our presenter today, as I mentioned, is John Nolan. John is the Associate Product Manager here on our Life Sciences team at ReadTech. He handles all of the SPL Pharma drug products and services for our customers. And you may know him if you've been working with ReadTech for a while. Previously to his current role, John worked on our SPL team and exchanged many emails and phone calls helping customers through setup and order processes. So John is certainly well known to many of you, and you're in great hands with someone with a lot of experience in this area. So now I'll turn things over to John if you're ready to begin, and we'll get started on today's presentation.
All right, thank you, Dan. So the main focus of today's webinar is really going to be on the blanket no change certification SPL submission. But before we get into that, I would like to give you a little background on where this is all coming from. So the FDA published the SPL final rule back on August 31st, 2016. And what the final rule does is that it implements most of these regulations that were proposed originally back all the way in 2006 to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which requires electronic submissions. However, this didn't really go into effect until November 29th, 2016. And essentially what the final rule does is that it affects firms that either register establishments or list products under the following parts of Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations. So some of the key changes that you may or may not be aware of that were contained in the final rule were more specifically 207.1. It provides some new and revised definitions. Some of these definitions have been around for a while, and some of you may be familiar with them. Some of these new terms include finished drug product, unfinished drug product, bulk drug substance, private label distribution, registered and outsourced facility. But then as far as the revised definitions go, they made some revisions to terms such as active pharmaceutical ingredient, otherwise referred to as APIs, commercial distribution, content of labeling, importer, manufacturer, private label distributor. You're going to hear this commonly referred to as PLDs, relabel, repack, and representative sampling of any other labeling. Then we move into 207.61, which essentially clarifies that registrations and listing information must be submitted to the FDA electronically. In years past, prior to accepting SPL submission, structured product labeling, a lot of manufacturers, even some distributors, would submit in a paper format. We are seeing today that there is still a good number of manufacturers out there that may have submissions in the FDA repository that are in a paper format. However, now with the FDA final SPL final rule in place, those paper formats are no longer valid. So what you really have to do, if you do have any paper submissions out there, is that you have to look at your product line or product portfolio, find out what you have in paper submission, and you'll have to make an electronic submission to the FDA. If you do not make an electronic submission to the FDA, then your product's no longer going to appear in any of the drug label repositories, such as perhaps the NDC directory. 207.57, this allows registrants to submit a blanket no changes certification, which is applicable to listed information that has previously been submitted electronically, rather than making a product no changes certification for individual drug listings. Back when the FDA first started talking about this, a couple years back, they were trying to plan out how they were going to go about doing these blanket no change certifications. I believe back around August, end of August, early September, they decided that they were going to move forward with a new SPL submission type, which is called the blanket no change certification for product listings. This new SPL submission type must be submitted between October 1st, which is already passed, through December 31st. This is going to be an annual submission. So the receipt of the new submission during this period will consider a statement that all product listings that have been reviewed and that those that were not specifically updated should be considered to still be current and active in the FDA's repository. So any product listing that is not updated within a year for which a blanket no change certification has been received, this may be considered inactive or removed from the NDC directory and possibly any other publications of listing data, such as Daily Med. Some further clarifications in the final rule. Establishment registrations, they are required for all foreign and domestic manufacturers, repackers, relabelers, and salvagers. PLDs do not have to register. Again, a PLD is a private label distributor, unless they perform one of the operations mentioned above. PLDs are required, however, to have their own NDC labeler code to make drug product label submissions. So when we get into the drug listing, each registrant must list each drug that it manufactures, repacks, relabels, or salvages for commercial distribution. For both animal and human drugs, each registrant must list each drug it manufactures, repacks, relabels for private label for commercial distribution under the trade name, or perhaps a label of a private label distributor using an NDC that includes such private label distributor's labeler code. Additionally, in the case of human drugs, each registrant must list each human drug it manufactures, repacks, or relabels using an NDC that includes the registrant's own labeler code, regardless of whether this drug is commercially distributed under the registrant's own label or trade name, or under a label, trade name, or private label distributor. There have been some revisions to NDCs as well. In the future, the FDA is looking to include the use of 11-digit NDCs. Currently, the format is only 10 digits, but what's happening now is that they're starting to run out of the 5-digit labeler codes that they've been sending out to new labelers out there. So they're going to look to expand the labeler code from 5 to 6 digits. It also allows you to reserve an NDC number. In order to do so, what they have done is they have introduced a new marketing category, or not a marketing category, excuse me, marketing status. Previously, there was only 2. Now there are 3. For actively marketed drugs, you would use an active marketing status. For delisted drugs, you would use completed. Now they're introducing a marketing status called new. And essentially, if you make a submission with the marketing status new, that's basically informing the FDA that you're only reserving the NDC number for a period of time, not necessarily making a drug listing submission. So if you submit with the new marketing status, again, that's only reserving the NDC number. Once your product goes on market, you'd have to revise that product listing to update the status to active in order to make an official drug product listing. And again, there have been some changes to what triggers a revision to the product code portion. This, again, is the middle segment of the NDC number. This was clarified further in the final rule. Some of those changes would be such as changing the proprietary name if you're changing any product characteristics, active ingredients for some examples, for more details, you can look up the final rule and find out the extent of what those changes are. And again, NDC numbers should not be used for any non-drug products such as a dietary supplement or medical foods. Dietary supplements will utilize what's called an NHRIC code, and the same would go for medical foods. So you would not find any type of dietary supplement in the NDC directory, for example. So here we just want to give you a background on some of the annual submissions timelines. Starting in January 1st through April 1st, you have to make your ACA 6004 drug sample distribution reports. These are for the previous calendar year. Moving on to May 1st to June 1st, for any generic companies out there or anybody that's involved with generics, you have to make your GDUFA self-ID submission. Then, starting October 1st through December 31st, this is the annual reporting period for your establishment registrations, as well as the new drug listing no change certification. Again, we'd like to remind you to please submit any of your questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A module, and please do not use the chat module. So now we're going to really move into the focus of this webinar, talking about the blanket no change certification, as well as the requirements and the timelines. So with the blanket no change certification, registrants are encouraged to submit listings information for every drug subject to listing under their part prior to commercial distribution, and to encourage to update listing information at the time of any change affecting information previously submitted. So really, what does this mean? It means that you should really be paying attention to your product portfolio and making changes to your product listings as they come through. For example, if a new adverse event is reported or indication, something needs to change in the indication and usage, don't wait. Update that SPL, get that submitted to the FDA as soon as possible. What's going to happen here, if you do not resubmit this product listing, you're going to have to move forward with a blanket no change certification and list this product on a blanket no change certification to certify that the product is still active. But again, really the blanket no change certification is an exercise that the FDA is looking to implement to make sure that people are looking at their product portfolio, reviewing all their information and making sure it's up to date and current to make sure they're not misbranding any information. So we're going to restate this a few times probably in this webinar, is that the certification period has already started. It started on October 1st, and we're approaching the end, December 31st, in only a couple weeks here. And again, please keep in mind this is an annual submission. So who must certify? Ultimately, the responsibility to certify products lies with the registered manufacturing establishment. This is really similar to what you're doing with product listings now. With product listings, the ultimate responsibility does lie on the manufacturer. So, but in reality, either the private label distributor or contract manufacturer can recertify the products. It really depends on your current submission process that you have on place between one another. I like to stress that communication is really key here. Private label distributors and contract manufacturers should really be working together to ensure that all their NDCs are properly certified. You really just got to communicate and work out a process between one another, who's going to hold that responsibility. If you're a private label distributor today and you've been making your own submissions to the FDA for your product listings, you can surely continue with this. Nothing's going to change there. It's not saying that you have to change your process now and the contract manufacturer must submit on your behalf. It's just giving some clarification that, ultimately the responsibility lies on the manufacturer of your product. So you should really work together to ensure that everything's in place and you have a plan going forward. With these product listings, or these blanket no change certifications, U.S. agents, importers, consultants, private label distributors, or anybody that's acting as an authorized agent for the registrant can submit the product listing certification SPL files. But we're going to get into the requirements for the blanket no change. You're going to see some information about the authorized agent in a little more detail. There has been some confusion about who is the authorized agent and some panic. We don't know who our authorized agent is. In reality, the FDA does not have any official term or definition for the authorized agent. In reality, it just has to be somebody that's making that submission. It could be somebody at your company, it could be somebody at your consultant's company, your manufacturer. It doesn't really matter. The FDA is not going to trace that back to being a specific person. Again, there is no official definition for an authorized agent. In the words of the FDA in a webinar that they presented, they essentially said your grandmother can submit these and you can list them as your authorized agent. But yeah, I wouldn't really worry too much about that if you have not made a blanket no change certification yet or have questions concerning the authorized agent. So getting into what must be certified, here's that timeline again between October 1st and December 31st. Every active listing on file with the FDA that has not been updated within the past calendar year must be certified that no changes have occurred since the last update in order to remain active for the upcoming calendar year. So if you have a product portfolio of, say, about 10 products, and you have not submitted any changes for those 10 products within 2017, before December 31st of this year, you have to submit a blanket no change certification certifying that no changes have occurred since your last submission to the FDA. Now, if you have 10 products and one of those was updated throughout 2017 and submitted to the FDA, then you only have to certify 9 products, for example, because you have 9 products that are not changed throughout that year. So you have to certify again that no changes have occurred since the last update. So what types of listings are required to make these types of submissions? CEDAR and CBER regulated products, finished and unfinished bulk API listings, approved and unapproved listings, RX and OTC listings, any medical gases, homeopathics, bulk for human compounding. This includes private label distributors listings as well as contract manufacturer listings. Also, repackaged and relabeled listings. You notice that we did not have animal health on there, and that's really because CVM is following a different process to certify veterinary product listings. I have been monitoring that a little closely, and I really have not seen any information how CVM is moving forward with recertifying products. So I'd like to ask that you please contact CVM with any more information on their certification process. So how do you certify? Again, back in September, the FDA has introduced, I believe it was September, introduced a new submission type titled the Blanket No Changes Certification of Product Listings. It utilizes a link code of 86445-4, and essentially it uses NDCs for your blanket certification. The NDCs, I should say the NDC product code to clarify. That will be your first 2 segments of your NDC, the labeler code portion and the product code portion. And this is really the most important part of the certification process. So the first part of information that's being gathered in this submission is called the authorized agent data. You'd have to provide a company name, a company DUNS number, a contact person name, a contact telephone number, and a contact email address. Keep in mind again that really there is no formal definition of who is an authorized agent. This can be anybody at your company if you're making a submission. It could be your consultant. It could be somebody at your manufacturer's facility. So don't put too much thought into who should be your authorized agent or go into a panic trying to figure out who should be the authorized agent. It's really a contact person. You know, they should be able to field questions if any should arise by the FDA. But again, don't go and drive yourself nuts trying to figure out who this should be. The next part of information that's being collected is the manufacturer establishment. You need to provide a manufacturer establishment name, DUNS number, and NDC product code. This facility that you're listing in the blanket no change certification has to be currently registered with the FDA. If it is not currently registered with the FDA, your blanket no change certification will fail upon submission to the FDA. So whomever you list here for your establishment and DUNS, again, just take a look back to check the drug establishment current registration system to see if they're currently registered. If not, get a registration in right away to the FDA. Registration period for establishments also ends December 31st. So if you have not made a drug establishment registration submission yet for any facilities that you may operate or own, you want to get that in ASAP. And again, the NDC product codes that are manufactured at that manufacturing facility should be listed underneath that establishment. So just a reminder here, a DUNS number, this is a 9-digit number assigned by Dun & Bradstreet that is required for any electronic registration with the FDA. And again, just a reminder about the authorized agent. This is just a person at a company that acts on behalf of the firm certifying the products. And they should really be somebody that can address any questions the FDA may come up with, if any, I should say. Here's some important considerations I would like everybody to keep in mind. Again, only electronic SPL listings can be certified. Any lingering paper submissions that you may have out there, you're going to have to look at that internally and get on board and make these electronic submissions. I would recommend getting that done sooner than later to make sure that there's no problems between you and the FDA or any other regulatory authority. Certification period has begun as of October 31st and set to end soon, December 31st. The certification must be done annually for each upcoming calendar year. So this is not just a one and done and, you know, I recertified my products. You're going to have to do this again in 2018 and 2019 and so on. The certification of the SPL submissions will only be accepted during the registration period. This is something really important to keep in mind. With establishment registrations, if you miss the October 31st deadline, it's a big deal, but the FDA will let you submit another establishment registration submission come January 1st. With this new SPL blanket certification submission, once December 31st ends, you cannot submit a blanket no change certification. The FDA will not accept them. They said they're not making any exceptions or extending any kind of deadlines to anybody. They want this done by the 31st, and that's that. So basically, what's going to happen is if you do not make that submission by December 31st to certify your products, those products will become expired, and we'll get into that a little further. So again, only listings that have not been submitted throughout the calendar year have to be certified. If you have made a submission, an SPL submission sometime this year, you don't have to certify that product again. But, you know, when making your submission and you do happen to list that NDC product code on the blanket no change certification, it's not going to cause any issue. The FDA said basically you can certify the product as many times as you want as long as it's certified. That's really what they're looking for. They want to see what products are out there, what's still actively on the market, who's making these, and so forth. So they're really doing what I like to say a house cleaning exercise. They have a few 100,000 labels in their repository now, and they really want to go through and remove a lot of these labels for companies that may have went out of business or took the lazy way out for delisting products and never delisted them properly, just kind of let them sit there in limbo on the NDC repository. So again, only the listings that have not been submitted this year need to be certified. An NDC only needs to be certified once per year. This goes back to the last point that I pointed out. Establishment registrations have to be up to date. And certification of NDC product code is a statement that all product data has been reviewed and deemed accurate and up to date. Again, deemed accurate is pretty important here. You really want to go through and make sure that all the information in your product is currently up to date and to avoid any types of issues such as warning letters from the FDA. Product listings with a known data deficiency identified by the FDA cannot be certified. So if you have any products out there where the FDA has contacted you and stated that there's some sort of data deficiency, you cannot put that in the blanket no change certification. It will trigger a validation error, and your whole blanket no change certification will be rejected. You will have to find out what that data deficiency is, correct it in your drug listing, and resubmit a new drug listing SPL for that product that has the issue. So if you need any more details on a product that you may have a data deficiency, you want to contact the FDA at fda.hhs.gov, and they'll be able to provide you with more details about what the deficiency is and how it should be corrected. Delisted products cannot and should not be certified. Some clarification on that. Delisted products would be something that has been, where a marketing end date has already passed. Say if you have a product where you've included a future marketing end date, such as 12/20/2019, well, that marketing end date hasn't come to pass yet. So ultimately, that product is still on the market, and you have to certify that product. So please keep that in mind when you're looking at delisted products. Delisting is not official until that marketing end date that you have put in place has come to pass. So what's the impact of missing a certification? So you don't make a certification by December 31st. Well, what's going to happen is, come January 1st, that product's going to be expired. The FDA will not allow you to make another blanket no-change certification. So your product will become marked as expired in the NDC directory, and it will also be removed from any NSDE files and could potentially affect any CMS reimbursements. DailyMed and the FDA, or National Library of Medicine, who operates DailyMed, and the FDA are currently talking how they're going to handle product listings posted on the DailyMed website. I see this going the same way, either being marked as expired or being completely removed from the DailyMed website. So what do you do if you miss the December 31st deadline? You're going to have to submit a new product SPL for each product that you have in your product portfolio to the FDA. This can be costly, this can be time-consuming, and really it's not the path that you want to go. So I recommend, if you haven't done so already, really start looking at your product portfolio and decide what needs to be certified before the December 31st deadline comes up. Not only will it save you money, but also it will save you any trouble that you may have from the FDA contacting you and really missing your CMS reimbursements and not being able to market your products. So this is really a severe consequence here if you do not certify your products by December 31st. So what's the difference between expired and delisted? Expired is basically the listed products not certified. Delisted, listed products are removed from commercial distribution. It's no longer being marketed to the general public or commercial distribution. And as Paul Loback from the FDA said, don't let expired be the lazy way to delist. You really want to follow the FDA regulations. If you have products out there that are no longer on the market, take the appropriate steps and delist these products. Once you delist a product, it really goes into FDA archives, which are used by many people, or it can be used further down the line. Just because you delisted a product does not mean your product listing goes away. It can be used by medical students, it can be used by litigators, it can be used by doctors in the future, and they're pulling this information from the FDA archives as well as the National Library of Medicine. So, when you delist, that information is still available. For example, if any legal problems come up in the future for your company and a litigator looks at a past product or looking into a past product, you really want that information in the DailyMed archives or the FDA repository archives so it's there. It's a clear audit trail of your business processes. So again, please don't let your products expire. Delist them properly if they're no longer being marketed. So how do you perform the blanket no change certification if you don't have any clue of how you're going to handle this today? There are options out there. Cedar Direct is potentially an option that you can use. However, there are some limitations with Cedar Direct. With Cedar Direct, if you have not previously done your product listings in the past, what will happen is that you can't use Cedar Direct. It won't pull your information there. So basically, you had to be using Cedar Direct to begin to do a blanket no change. So you really want to submit your no change product certification and established registration beginning October 1st. So keep that in mind. Customer-centric SPL team we have here can coach you through the process of locating and assembling the data. So if you would prefer to use a vendor such as Retech, please contact us today and we'll help you gather your information and make these types of submissions. And keep in mind, too, that with this first year here, it's going to be a learning process for everybody. It's going to be a lot of data mining, and it's not going to be easy. But once you get that initial submission done to the FDA, the coming year should be much easier. You know, you have a clear audit trail of your products, and as long as you're updating your listings and establishments during the year, then you can recertify without any changes during the reporting period.
John, sorry, let me just jump in here and mention that on that previous slide, I apologize, that first bullet that says FDA solution not available, that is a leftover from our earlier annual reporting period webinar when Cedar Direct's capabilities hadn't yet been deployed. So that's an error. We'll update that before we send out the deck to everyone.
Thank you, Dan. As Dan was saying, Cedar Direct is up and available if that's the path you want to take. But again, keep in mind, if you did not do any of your product listings through Cedar Direct, that information will not be there available for you for your blanket node change certification, and it will be more of a manual effort for you. So, you know, you can use Cedar Direct, you can use a vendor. Retech's here for you if you're a current customer. If you're not a current customer, we'll be happy to work with you. But again, please make sure that you get your submissions in before December 31st so you meet the FDA deadlines. Unfortunately, time is running out. December 31st is fastly approaching. So to help guarantee delivery of your blanket node change certification file in time to meet the December 31st deadline, we're asking that you submit or that we receive your information no later than 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, December 22nd. You know, it's been a very busy time for us here. A lot of people, this is new again for a lot of people out there, or everybody in the industry, I should say. People are scrambling to delist products and find out what products they have in their portfolio and get all this information out there. So don't wait on this. Get it done. Please get it to us if we're going to be your solution, again, by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, December 22nd. So we're 22nd.
All right, so just before we go on to questions, and we do have several questions in the queue, I just want to remind everyone, Retech has a knowledge center where we put educational blog posts. The recording of this webinar will be on the knowledge center. There's previous webinars on this and other topics. So you can visit that anytime. There's lots of great resources that we've spent time creating there. And also, if you want to see that content as it's published and be aware of new content and events like this, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Retech Life Sciences is the name of our showcase page for this area of the business. Or you can follow us on Twitter at Retech LifeSci. And now, John, if you're, and also, excuse me, I'll invite you to please contact the Retech Life Sciences team. If you're not a current customer, you need to get set up. If you're an inactive customer or our agreement has expired, you can contact our team using this information. If you're a current active customer, as always, you can send an email to our SPL team. That email is just spl@retech.com. You can contact us through your normal channels. But if you have questions or you need help getting started, give us a call today as soon as this webinar is over. Again, we're fast approaching the deadline, and we have quite the number of orders in the queue, and we are working hard to get them all out in time. So secure your place in line, give us a call, shoot us an email right away. So now, John, if you're ready, we'll move on to questions and answers.
Absolutely.
Okay, first question I have here says, after we submit the blanket no change notification form, what date of update will I see on DailyMed? Should it be the date of the blanket submission, or will it be a date after January 1st, 2018?
That's a great question. So what's going to happen once you submit the blanket no change certification form, nothing will happen on DailyMed. None of your product listings will be updated on DailyMed. How the FDA are currently tracking this is through the NDC directory. If you go to Google and search FDA NDC directory, you can locate the NDC directory webpage. They'll have a downloadable file which will show companies and products that have been certified and the date that have been certified. So there's no connection to Daily Med at this moment. When you make these blanket no change certifications, as if that's going to be something to be included in the future, I have not heard any discussion other than the potential of products that are not certified being pulled off of Daily Med, but none of your dates should change on Daily Med.
That kind of connects to a question we've already received, so let me just ask this now. It says, just to confirm, if a product has not had an updated SPL during 2017 or no change certification, it will be deemed as expired by the FDA, but we're still not sure how that will affect the listing on Daily Med. Is that correct?
Correct. Really, FDA is your single source of truth. Daily Med is run by the National Library of Medicine in a partnership with the FDA. Really, anything that sits in an FDA label repository is more important than anything that's currently on Daily Med. So it will show as expired in the FDA label repositories, but nothing at this time will happen on Daily Med. As far as I know, your product listing on Daily Med will sit there. I do know that the FDA has been discussing with the National Library of Medicine how they would handle these expired listings. But please keep in mind that Daily Med is not really your single source of truth. It's FDA label repositories such as the NDC directory that's your single source of truth for accurate product listing submissions. So if you have any CMS reimbursements out there, or you're working with other companies that require a valid submission to the FDA, if it's shown as expired on the FDA websites, then you're going to run into an issue.
Okay. Next question here says, if the annual report period for a product falls very close to the December 31st deadline for no change certification, would that satisfy the requirement? Would FDA see that nothing has changed from the annual report submission?
Can you restate that?
I can restate it. I'm not sure if I'll get it correctly.
Restate it? Okay.
If the annual report for a product falls very close to the December 31st deadline, would that satisfy the requirement? Would FDA see that nothing has changed from the annual report? So I think what they're saying is if the annual report for a drug product, an RX product, is submitted, does that count as updating your product listing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's really the purpose of the blanket no change certification submission. It's to certify that no changes have been done to your product or products throughout the year, and you're certifying that this product is up to date, contains accurate information, and is still on the market. So again, really that's the whole purpose of this exercise in this new SPL submission type.
Sure. So, and I'll just add, if you have multiple products, though, you still have to worry about the other products that have not been updated this year. So if you file an update or an annual report to one product, you have other products sitting out there that have not had any changes or submissions this year, you still need to do your blanket no change certification for those remaining products before the end of 2017.
Yeah, so essentially anything that was not officially drug listed with the FDA needs to be certified. So if your annual report that you submitted was your official drug listing for that product, then you're good with that product. You do not have to do the blanket no change certification.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this, and it's not a great one for this person. Can you request a waiver for blanket no change notifications, or excuse me, certifications?
Unfortunately, you cannot. I know the FDA really didn't provide a lot of time with releasing this new SPL submission type, but I have heard them say that they are not going to waive, or they're basically you have to make the blanket no change certification. If you don't make it by December 31st, then you're going to have to resubmit all of your products in SPL format.
Another question, we've made a few references to CMS reimbursements. What is a CMS reimbursement? Is that Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, if you have a product that is expired, disappears from the FDA label repository, and you're currently receiving reimbursements from one of those federal programs for your products, that may affect that. Next question here says, as a distributor, I'm concerned my contract manufacturer may not have all my product listings up to date. What do I need to do before we make the no change submission?
The first thing I would do is communicate with that contract manufacturer. Communication, it's really should be a partnership between the private label distributor and the contract manufacturer, and you should really be in communication with how these product listings are getting submitted to the FDA. I'm assuming that if you say you're not sure if they're up to date, I'm assuming that your contract manufacturer is handling your submissions today. So what I would do is, as soon as this webinar is over, is get on the phone with your contract manufacturer and start having this discussion with them. Make sure that they understand that the blanket no change certification is required now and is about to end the reporting period on December 31st, and get a plan in place. It's really the only guidance that I can give you at this point with that, but again, communication is going to be really crucial here.
All right, next question says, we submitted 8 drug listings for the first time via SPL. They were converted from paper within the past month. Are we still required to submit a blanket no change?
If those are your only 8 products that you have and you made an electronic submission in 2017, you do not have to do a blanket no change this year. However, this is an annual submission, so keep in mind October 1st, 2018, this annual reporting period is going to start up again. So if you don't make any updates to those 8 products in 2018, you will have to do a blanket no change certification between October 1st, 2018 and October 31st, 2018. December 31st, thank you. But again, if those are your only 8 products and you submitted them in 2017, you're good to go for this year.
Okay. Next question says, by new SPL, do you just mean the same SPL with the next rev number? So I'm guessing this person's talking about if their listing expires and they need to submit a new drug listing to relist that product in 2018.
Yes.
What is that new listing?
If you're referring to an expired listing that you have to resubmit, you would have to update the version number, retain the set ID, and assign a new root ID and submit to the FDA.
Okay, so I think this question is a follow-up question on one of our earlier ones. So just to clarify here, I'm assuming they were saying if you miss the no change certification deadline, nothing will be changed on Daily Med immediately, but the product will be listed as expired on the NDC database.
Correct.
One thing I'll just mention is that this is the first time through the process, so what we know about the process is from FDA's stated intentions. I think we just have to take them at their word and the fact that they're serious. Again, as John mentioned, FDA and National Library of Medicine are separate organizations within the federal government, but they do work closely together. They may change what they're doing after the new year. They may work with NLM to take those listings down. We don't really know for sure what will happen. We only know by what FDA has said so far, and that's obviously subject to change because this is the first time they're going through the process as well. Okay, so next question here says, can we keep the same NDC number with that new SPL?
Oh, absolutely. The only time you have to change an NDC number is if any of your product characteristics change. Say if you have a product out there and it's a green tablet and you switch to a manufacturer or you're trying to rebrand and you change that tablet to blue, you would have to change your NDC number then. In the FDA's eyes, even though it's essentially called the same name or it's the same product and it gives you the same therapeutic effects, in the FDA's eyes, it's a new product. So they're going to make you assign a new NDC number. Again, what I would recommend doing is reviewing the CFR under Part 207. There's a section in there about NDCs, and it will tell you what the changes are that would constitute a change to your NDC number. So, you know, if your product expires, there's absolutely no reason for you to assign a new NDC. You maintain the same NDC. Again, you would have to update the version number that's in the SPL. You would retain the set ID, which is very important, and you would assign a new root ID, and you would make a submission to the FDA.
Okay. This is currently the last question in the queue, although I keep thinking we're at the end of the list and another one comes in. It says, if the distributor drug lists the product, is it required to have the contract manufacturer drug list the same product under their label or code?
That's a great question. Yes, manufacturers have to do a listing under their own label or code. That's been a requirement for quite some time now. To try not to confuse anybody, there's really two types of listings when you're a contract manufacturer and you're a private label distributor. Your contract manufacturer must have a label or code. The private label distributor also must have a label or code. That contract manufacturer has to make a submission under their label or code, which is slightly different. They do not contain what we refer to as the content of labeling, which is essentially the narrative of the listing, or if you're an OTC, the drug facts. It includes the private label distributor's image of their carton or bottle label. And then it's submitted under the manufacturer's label or code. Then there's a second one for the private label distributor that needs to be submitted to the FDA under the private label distributor's label or code. This is what you see once posted in Daily Med. We refer to this as the distributor's listing. The distributor's listing has to have the content of labeling, whether that be your drug facts or prescribing information. It has to have your representative labeling, such as a carton image or a bottle label, etc. And then it would have the product listing metadata as well. So there always should be two listings when dealing with a contract manufacturer and a private label distributor. One for the manufacturer and the second for the distributor. I hope that helps answer your question. If you need more information on that or how that process works, you can contact us here at Reed and somebody will help explain that to you a little further.
Great. So that's the end of the questions I have in our queue here. If you have additional questions after the webinar, please contact us. Maybe, John, you can go back to the contact us slide one up there. Again, if you're an existing customer, you can contact our SPL team directly, spl@readtech.com. If you're a new customer or a customer that's been inactive and has an expired agreement, contact our team here, pharma@readtech.com. Do it today. Do it right after you get off this webinar. This is really important requirement for you to meet, and the consequences are significant of not meeting it. And again, we are very, very close to the deadline. So I hope this has been a valuable session for everyone. Feel free to contact us with additional questions and share the recording and slide materials with your colleagues as soon as we get that out to you within the next couple days. Hope you all have a great afternoon and happy holidays.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.